Woman's weird intuition about an old dog she adopts from a center comes true after she takes it to the vet. One would wonder how many times destiny would come and help you to find and meet that long-lost friend you've always missed. This is one such story where fate pulls apart two very dear friends and then plays a strange game with them. Nicole was a lover of dogs, and once she had her own house, she wanted to adopt one. She never knew what destiny had in store for her. Yes, she did, and they were the best of friends. This is about Nicole Grimes and Chloe, two best friends. They were both living a happy life until things turned to a dark road and they had to separate. Nicole missed her friend and desperately wanted her back in her life. Though Nicole deeply desired to meet her best friend again, she also knew that it would never be possible for her to see Chloe. Time passed and the thought of meeting her friend got buried away. But then what happened was nothing less than a miracle. Many people wondered why Nicole was so deeply attached to her dog Chloe. Though she never treated Chloe as a pet, there was a reason why she was so close to her pet and why she couldn't forget her even after years of separation. Nicole's grandma loved her a lot, and with Nicole's birthday approaching, she wanted to gift her something that would fill her life with joy and happiness. Something that she would love and be loved back from. All she could think of was one thing. Chloe was a gift to Nicole from her grandma, and this was the reason behind her being so deeply attached to the dog. Nicole had just turned 10, and the puppy was the best present she'd ever received. Nicole's love for her pet was evident, and they were now best friends. She was so much in love with the puppy that she gave her a part of her own name. Nicole, for the puppy, became Chloe. The name itself gave testimony of their love. The name was suggested by her grandma as she wanted them to be connected in some way, and Nicole loved the idea. Life was very good for them. They enjoyed each other's company. Nicole would take her pup out in the park and would play and roam around all day. Even at home, she would keep playing with Chloe. Her friends also liked Chloe, and Nicole was sure that she'd be in the company of her best friend. As days passed, their bonding grew deeper. Nicole, with her friend, was having the time of her life. Her grandma was happy to see her bond with the pet. The story of their friendship is what Nicole boasted of. More time passed, and both of them became inseparable. Nicole never even came across the thought of spending her time without Chloe. But was she right? Will it always be like this? Things were about to change, and Nicole will absolutely not like what's going to happen. In the beginning, it was wonderful for Nicole's parents as well. They were delighted to see their daughter happy, and it was all they could have ever asked for. But soon some problems became evident enough for them to think of something that Nicole would never approve of. Nicole's parents were hesitant to discuss the problem with her, and they thought this would hurt her, but for the last few days things had turned ugly for Nicole's father, and surprisingly the reason was Chloe. They were still looking for an opportunity to talk to their daughter. Chloe was still just a puppy, and she would playfully run around the house. It was just that she couldn't live without Nicole, and when she was not around she'd make a mess, but that wasn't the only issue. The main problem for the parents to keep the puppy was that Nicole's father had taken up a job in customer retail, and most of his work happened from home. With Chloe barking all day, it was getting difficult for him to talk to his clients over the phone. Nicole's father had a tough job and he needed to keep it. This meant that they'd have to let the dog go, which was not their decision to make. They had asked Nicole, and they were sure how she would react. This had to be her decision. And finally, after thinking a lot, her parents decided to tell her. When the news was broken to her, reaction was obvious, but her decision was surprising. When her parents told her about this, she acted really mature. Nicole's father played at the idea of giving Chloe for adoption, and he also wanted to make sure that Chloe lived a happy life. He went ahead and expressed his thoughts to his daughter. What Nicole said made her father sure that her daughter was now a grown-up. Nicole was completely heartbroken by the thought of letting her dearest friend go, but she was mature enough to understand that it was necessary for her father to keep the job, and for that to happen, she'll have to let Chloe go, and she decided to do it in favor of her parents. The adoption was planned, but Nicole wanted to be sure that the family that would be adopting Chloe would be loving towards her and would keep her happy. They began looking for a good adoption center that would help them to find a new home. Soon they found a good local adoption center that was ready to take in Chloe and assured that a good family would adopt her. Satisfied, Nicole and the family went ahead with the formalities. Then came the most difficult part of all. For Nicole, saying goodbye to Chloe was like leaving her whole life behind and moving ahead like this, is what she had never imagined. She'd been wise enough to understand the need for not having Chloe around. It was time, and with a heavy heart, Nicole said goodbye to her dearest friend. She had tears in her eyes, but again knew that this was for the best. She'd miss walking with her to the park and playing around all day. She'd miss her bust, also cherish the good time spent with her. The next day, Nicole's father carried Chloe to the adoption center and handed over the cute dog to them. They kept assuring him that only a good and caring family would adopt Chloe, and she'd live happily in her new home. Chloe was a happy and charming pet. It wasn't difficult for the adoption center to find a family to adopt her. They were awed by her charm and immediately wanted Chloe as their pet. Nicole and her family were really happy to know this. Chloe was soon in her new house. Though Nicole had made the decision for letting Chloe go, after getting back home, she was missing her badly. She was new to spending her days without Chloe, and this made it difficult for her. The best that she could do was distract herself and other things, which she tried to do, but it was almost impossible for her to forget her pet. Life was slowly turning normal. Slowly, Nicole was almost over it. It wasn't that she didn't miss her friend, but she'd accepted that nothing can be forever and she had to move on. Inside her head, she'd planned something that she would do in the future. It had been 10 years since Nicole had said goodbye to Chloe, and she now had her own family. Chloe must be somewhere happy with the family that adopted her after Nicole. Nicole now lived with her family, and that plan that she had 10 years ago could be executed. Nicole was aware that she had to let go of her pet because she lived with her parents, and a dog around the house at that point could make her father lose her job. Now, things were different. She had her own house, and her husband was not in customer service. Her love for Chloe made her think that one day she could adopt a dog. The time was here. She had it jotted down. She'd go to the local adoption center and adopt a dog that would love as she did Chloe. She was in the adoption center looking for options. She was amused by the set of dogs that were available for adoption, but her eyes stuck on one older dog that she felt she'd known before. The elderly dog looked exactly like Chloe. Nicole was sure that this very dog was the best friend of her childhood. But could that be possible? Chloe'd been adopted by a loving family, and why would they put her in the adoption center? Without another thought, Nicole signed the formalities and brought the dog back to her home. She'd stare at it for hours, thinking if she had actually met her long-lost friend. She'd be the happiest if this was true, but she just wasn't sure. She was really keen to know if her intuition was leading her the right way. The dog looked familiar, but didn't behave the same. It was quiet and spent a lot of time sitting. It wasn't as active as Chloe, but it would stare at Nicole the same way she did. She wondered if this was Chloe. Why did she end up finding her in an adoption center? Did the family actually love her or left her because they didn't want her? There were a lot of questions. Did her best friend go through some tragedy in the past 10 years? While she was lost in her thoughts, she came across an idea that she could tell if her dog was Chloe. When Chloe was really small, they'd implanted a tracking chip in her to find her if she was ever lost. If the chip was still there, all doubts would fade away. She wasted no time taking the dog to the vet to find out if the chip was implanted. The vet did a thorough checkup and revealed the results to Nicole. And what she heard brought tears to her eyes. It was unbelievable. The vet confirmed that the old dog was Chloe. Nicole was in shock. This was nothing less than destiny, and some higher power that brought them together after 10 years. Nicole was really happy to find her friend back. Everyone believed that their crossing paths again was a miracle. But for Nicole, the only thing that mattered was that her wish of meeting her long-lost friend came true. She would never let Chloe go anywhere away from her again. The past was repeating itself. Just like Chloe had become best friends with Nicole, the same way she befriended Nicole's daughter. A new friendship had begun. The adorable doggie was a gift from Nicole to her daughter. Nicole was now curious as to why the family left behind Chloe. She went to have a word with the adoption center staff, and she came to know that Chloe had a good life, and the family had only returned her to the adoption center because they were growing old and they couldn't afford to keep a dog. All through her life, Chloe was pampered and loved. After all these years, Nicole and Chloe are back together, living and enjoying, making up for all the years they couldn't meet. Chloe was back to being a happy and cute dog. She'd play with Nicole's daughter just the same way she did with Nicole.